The war room of the Galactic Defense Coalition fell silent as Ensign Marcus Chen's question hung in the recycled air. Admiral Vexithera's crystalline exoskeleton clicked nervously, while Commander Zolketh's tentacles writhed in what could only be described as bewilderment. The holographic display showed the standard Coalition fleet formation: sleek vessels with heavily armored engine compartments and exposed command bridges gleaming like jewels in the void. "Excuse me?" Admiral Vexithera's translator struggled with the concept, producing a series of discordant tones. Marcus, fresh out of Earth's Naval Academy and barely 3 days into his assignment aboard the flagship Harmony's Edge, repeated his question with the innocent persistence that only humans seem to possess. "Why do you armor the engines instead of the bridge? Wouldn't it make more sense to protect the command center?" The assembled officers, a mix of the Coalition's finest, military minds from 17 different species, exchanged glances that transcended language barriers. It was the universal look of beings who had just heard something so fundamentally wrong that their worldview required immediate recalibration. Commander Zolketh was the first to recover. Ensign Chen, his voice carrying the patience typically reserved for explaining basic concepts to larvae, the engines are the most vital component of any vessel. Without propulsion, a ship is merely an expensive coffin drifting through space. But without command staff, it's just an expensive missile, Marcus countered, his brow furrowed in genuine confusion. Back on Earth, we always prioritized protecting leadership. Generals don't charge into battle on the front lines. The silence that followed was so profound that the ship's environmental systems seemed unnaturally loud. Admiral Vexithera's compound eyes dilated, a sign of either deep thought or impending violence in her species. "Ensign," she began slowly, "across 17 civilizations and 400 years of space warfare, no species has ever questioned this fundamental principle. The engines must be protected at all costs. It is, how do you humans say, common sense?" But Marcus had that particular human expression that every alien in the Coalition had learned to fear. The look that preceded sentences beginning with, "What if?" or "Have you tried?" It was the same expression that had led to humans revolutionizing faster-than-light communication, reinventing plasma containment, and somehow making their crude chemical rockets more efficient than Altarian ion drives. "What if?" Marcus said, and several officers visibly winced. "The goal isn't to preserve the ship, but to win the battle." Fleet Admiral Keth Moore, a being whose species had been perfecting warfare since before humans discovered fire, leaned forward, on his many legs. "Elaborate, human." "Well, look at this." Marcus gestured to the tactical display. "Your standard engagement has ships trying to maneuver around each other to get shots at the engines. Both sides spend most of their time protecting their rear quarters while trying to flank the enemy. It's like a dance where everyone's afraid to step on each other's toes." He touched the controls, his security clearance, laughably basic, somehow sufficient to access the Coalition's most classified battle simulations. The assembled command staff watched as Marcus began sketching modifications to their formation. But what if you don't care about losing the ship? What if the ship is just a delivery system for the crew's decisions? You could strip all that heavy armor from the engines. They're just going to get shot anyway, and pack the bridge with every defensive system you can fit. Make it a fortress. His fingers danced across the holographic interface with the unconscious competence of a species that had been forced to innovate or die for millennia. Then you charge straight at the enemy. No maneuvering, no fancy tactics. Just point your ship at theirs and accelerate. The simulation showed his modified vessels, bridges wrapped in ablative armor and defensive fields, engines exposed and vulnerable, racing toward a traditional coalition formation. The enemy ships, programmed with 4 centuries of accepted tactical doctrine, attempted their standard flanking maneuvers. They never got the chance. Marcus's ships, accepting the inevitable loss of their engines, maintained course and speed long, enough to deliver devastating volleys directly into the enemy's weak points. The simulation ended with the traditional fleet in ruins and Marcus's ships floating dead in space, their engines destroyed, but their armored bridges intact. "The bridges survive," Marcus explained into the shocked silence. "Your crews survive. They can be picked up by rescue ships, debriefed, and put back into action. Meanwhile, the enemy fleet is gone, and all it cost you was some metal and plastic that you were probably going to lose anyway." Admiral Vexithara's exoskeleton had stopped, clicking entirely. This would be considered suicide among my people." "Martyrdom," corrected Commander Zolketh. "Honorable, but wasteful." "It's not martyrdom if you live through it," Marcus pointed out. "And it's not wasteful if it wins the war." Fleet Admiral Kethmore's translator was silent for so long that Marcus wondered if it had malfunctioned. When the Admiral finally spoke, his words carried the weight of someone whose fundamental understanding of reality had just shifted. "Human Chen, are you suggesting that your species would willingly sacrifice irreplaceable military assets for tactical advantage?" "Well, yeah," Marcus shrugged, as if the question itself was puzzling. "I mean, that's kind of what assets are for, right? You spend them to buy something more valuable, in this case, victory." The war room fell silent again as 17 species worth of military doctrine crumbled under the weight of human logic. Somewhere in the distance, a maintenance bot continued its eternal task of keeping the ship running, blissfully unaware that everything the coalition thought it knew about warfare had just changed. Admiral Vexthara was the first to speak. Her voice carrying a mixture of horror and admiration that would become familiar to anyone who worked closely with humans. "Schedule a full tactical review," she commanded, "and someone get me Earth Command on the quantum relay. I think we need to have a very long conversation about how humans wage war." As the meeting dispersed and officers hurried to implement what would later be called the Chen Doctrine, Marcus remained at the tactical display, already sketching modifications to their next assault plan. Around him, the greatest military minds in the galaxy worked frantically to unlearn 4 centuries of common sense. After all, they had humans to keep up with now.